Dr. Elena Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her brow as she adjusted her field glasses. The humid Amazon air thick with the sounds of a million creatures going about their daily business. The massive alien vessel descended through the canopy with surprising grace, its crystalline hull refracting the filtered sunlight into rainbow patterns that danced across the forest floor. After 18 months of careful diplomatic negotiations, the Galactic Zoological Survey had finally been granted permission to study Earth's wildlife for their comprehensive database. A routine procedure for newly contacted worlds, they had assured the United Nations. What could possibly go wrong with letting peaceful scientists observe some animals? The clearing had been prepared for weeks. International teams of xenobiologists, linguists, and diplomats had worked around the clock to ensure this first scientific exchange would go smoothly. Elena, as the lead terrestrial biologist, had personally selected this location for its incredible biodiversity. The Amazon represented Earth at its most vibrant, most alive. Surely it would impress their new galactic neighbors. The Kytherian delegation emerged from their ship like dancers stepping onto a stage, their tall, graceful forms moving with the fluid motions of beings who had evolved in low gravity. Their skin shimmered with an opalescent quality that shifted through subtle hues. What Elena had learned was their primary form of emotional expression. Their leader, researcher HFY, approached the Human Reception Committee with what Elena assumed was excitement, his skin displaying warm golden tones. "Greetings, humans of Earth." HFY's translator device rendered his melodic, almost musical speech into crisp English with a slight harmonic undertone. "We are deeply honored to study your world's fauna. Our preliminary orbital scans suggest a remarkable diversity of life forms, far exceeding the galactic average for inhabited worlds." Elena felt a surge of pride. Earth's biodiversity was indeed exceptional, even by her own standards. "Welcome to Earth," she replied, gesturing toward the forest with its towering trees and symphony of calls, chirps, and rustles. "We've prepared observation posts throughout the Amazon rainforest. Our wildlife here should give you a good representative sample of terrestrial biodiversity. We've got everything from insects to primates, amphibians to reptiles, and more bird species than you can count." The other Kytherian researchers, Kielnara, ZYX-Toll, and Meltai, began deploying their scanning equipment, elegant devices that hummed with barely audible energy. Their instruments were clearly advanced, capable of detecting life signs, biological processes, and evolutionary adaptations in real time. Elena watched with fascination as the alien scientists worked, their movements precise and coordinated. "Your world's evolutionary pressure systems appear quite intense," observed researcher Kielnara, studying her readings with what Elena was learning to recognize as scientific curiosity. "The competition for resources must be significant to produce such adaptive diversity." "Oh, it can be pretty competitive," Elena agreed cheerfully. "Natural selection at its finest. But that's what makes it so interesting, right? The incredible ways life finds to survive and thrive." If only she had known what that innocent statement would unleash. The first creature they encountered was a simple army ant column, streaming across the forest floor in their millions like a living river of coordinated purpose. Elena barely gave them a second glance. They were part of the background noise of the Amazon, as common as leaves on trees. She was pointing out a colorful toucan in the canopy when she noticed the Kytherians had frozen completely. Their skin had shifted to colors Elena had never seen before. Deep purples and stark whites that seemed to pulse with some kind of biological alarm system. The harmonic hum of their scanning equipment had changed pitch, becoming almost frantic in its intensity. "By the great void," whispered HFY, his voice carrying harmonics that the translator seemed to struggle with. What are those creatures?" Elena followed his gaze to the ant column and felt a moment of confusion. "Army ants," she said casually, crouching down to get a better look at the organized streams of insects. "They're just foraging. Pretty efficient hunters, actually. They can strip a small animal to bones in minutes when they're in feeding mode. Fascinating social structure. They form temporary bivouacs with their own bodies, create living bridges, coordinate flanking maneuvers. Really remarkable little creatures." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena looked up to find all 4 Kytherians staring at her with expressions that transcended species barriers. Pure, undiluted horror. Their skin had gone completely white, and Vexhai's translator was emitting small puffs of what looked suspiciously like smoke. "Did you say coordinated flanking maneuvers?" Kilnara's voice was barely above a whisper. "Living bridges?" added Ziwextol, his scanning equipment now beeping in patterns that sounded distinctly like panic. Elena nodded enthusiastically, warming to the subject. "Oh yes, they're incredibly organized. They can form chains of their own bodies to cross gaps, create temporary structures, and execute complex hunting strategies. Some species can even form living rafts to cross water. It's like watching a perfectly coordinated military operation, but with tiny insects. Nature's amazing, isn't it?" The Kytherians exchanged glances that managed to convey volumes of interspecies communication without words. "Military operation," Vexhai repeated slowly, as if testing the words for hidden meaning. "Exactly," Elena beamed. "Wait until you see what they can do when they encounter something really challenging. The tactical adaptations are just incredible." That was when Elena noticed that the alien scientists were very slowly backing toward their ship, their movements careful and deliberate, like people trying not to attract the attention of something dangerous. Something told her this scientific exchange was not going to go quite as planned. 3 days into the survey, Elena began to notice that the Kytherians' behavior had become increasingly erratic. What had started as enthusiastic scientific curiosity had devolved into something resembling barely controlled panic. The alien researchers jumped at every sound, the crack of a branch, the call of a bird, even the rustle of leaves in the wind sent them scrambling for their heavily shielded observation pods. Their sleep cycles had become disrupted. Elena would find them huddled together in their ship during what should have been their rest periods, their skin flickering through rapid color changes that her crash course in Kytherian psychology suggested indicated severe psychological stress. They refused to venture more than 50 meters from their vessel without a full complement of scanning equipment and what appeared to be some kind of protective energy fields. Most disturbing of all, they spent increasingly long periods frantically updating their databases, their elegant fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with an urgency that bordered on desperation. The harmonic hum of their equipment had taken on an almost frantic quality, and Elena had caught glimpses of their data streams, endless classifications, threat assessments, and what looked suspiciously like military tactical analyses. "Is everything all right?" Elena asked during their daily briefing, trying to keep her voice casual despite her growing concern. The Kytherians sat in their portable shelter, a translucent dome that filtered the forest air through what Elena suspected were multiple layers of biological screening systems. "You seem tense." Vexhai's skin rippled through several color changes, deep purples, stark whites, and sickly yellows, before settling on a shade that Elena had learned indicated profound unease. His large, luminous eyes darted constantly to the forest around them, as if expecting attack from any direction. "Dr. Rodriguez," he began, his melodic voice carrying undertones that the translator struggled to render. "We need to discuss your planet's classification system, what you call army ants. Our preliminary analysis suggests they are far more than simple insects." Elena raised an eyebrow. "More than insects? They are a coordinated bioweapon deployment system," Vexhai interrupted, his skin flashing to a stark white that Elena was beginning to recognize as the Kytherian equivalent of shouting. "Millions of individual attack units operating with hive-mind precision, capable of consuming any organic matter in their path. Their tactical coordination exceeds that of most military organizations in the Outer Rim systems." Elena blinked, processing this assessment. They're just ants doing what ants do. Foraging, protecting their colony, raising their young. Just ants. Researcher Kilnara's voice cracked through the translator, the harmonic undertones suggesting she was on the verge of what humans might recognize as hysteria. "We observed them yesterday during their foraging operation. They deployed advanced reconnaissance units, established perimeter security, and executed complex flanking maneuvers with precision that would make veteran military commanders weep with envy. She activated a holographic display showing their recorded footage. Elena watched, fascinated, as the army ants moved through the forest in what she had always considered their natural behavior. But now, seeing it through alien eyes, she began to understand their perspective. The ants did move like a military unit. Scout units advanced to survey territory, communication networks relayed information instantly across vast distances, and the main force divided into specialized units with specific tactical roles. When they encountered obstacles, they adapted their strategies in real time, forming living bridges from their own bodies and creating temporary structures with an efficiency that would be impressive in any engineering corps. They built living bridges from their own bodies, Kielnara continued, her skin now cycling through colors Elena had never seen before. They formed complex flanking maneuvers around obstacles, established supply lines, and executed tactical retreats when encountering superior force. And the coordination, by the Great Void, the coordination. Each individual unit operates with perfect knowledge of the overall strategic objective, while simultaneously adapting to local tactical requirements. ZYX Toll, who had been silent throughout the discussion, suddenly spoke up, his skin a deep purple that Elena associated with profound distress. Dr. Rodriguez, on my homeworld, our most advanced military units require extensive training, complex communication systems, and sophisticated command structures to achieve even basic coordinated operations. These ants demonstrated tactical capabilities that surpass anything in our military databases, and they do it instinctively. Elena looked at the holographic display, watching the ants go about their business with the casual efficiency of creatures who had been perfecting these techniques for millions of years. But they're not trying to be military units, she protested. They're just trying to survive and find food. Survival through overwhelming military superiority, Vexhai said grimly. Dr. Rodriguez, in galactic terms, these creatures represent a perfect fusion of biological adaptation and tactical warfare. They are, quite literally, living weapon systems. Elena felt a growing sense of unease. Wait until you see the leafcutter ants, she muttered, making a mental note to perhaps ease them into Earth's biodiversity more gradually. There are more varieties? Meltai, who had been silent until now, spoke in a voice that barely registered above a whisper. More tactical units? Oh yes, Elena said, not noticing the collective intake of breath from the Kytherian delegation. Leafcutters are fascinating. They practice agriculture, maintain complex fungal farms, have specialized castes for different roles, and their colonies can contain millions of individuals working in perfect coordination. They're like living cities with their own agricultural systems and waste management protocols. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Vexhai's translator emitting small puffs of smoke. Elena looked around at the alien scientists, their skin now displaying colors she was fairly certain existed only in their species' worst nightmares, and realized she had made a terrible mistake. She had no idea it was already too late for gradual introductions. The breaking point came on day 5 when Dr. Marcus Thompson, Elena's longtime research partner and closest friend, decided to take matters into his own hands. A behavioral ecologist with 15 years of fieldwork experience, Marcus had watched the Kytherians' deteriorating psychological state with growing concern. Their constant panic responses were disrupting the entire research program, and he was convinced that the problem was simply one of perspective. They're scared of everything because they don't understand context, he explained to Elena over breakfast, gesturing enthusiastically with his coffee mug. They see army ants as military units because they've never seen actual harmless creatures for comparison. What we need is a baseline demonstration. Show them some truly benign Earth life forms so they can recalibrate their threat assessment protocols. Elena had her doubts, but Marcus was already preparing what he called his comfort zone presentation, a carefully curated collection of what he considered the most harmless, gentle creatures Earth had to offer. He had spent 2 days assembling a small terrarium containing what he insisted were the most benign life forms he could find. A common garden spider no larger than a human thumbnail, several colorful beetles, and a small garter snake that moved with languid, peaceful grace. This is perfect, Marcus said, adjusting the terrarium's position for optimal viewing. Nothing threatening here. Nothing that could possibly be misinterpreted as dangerous. Just nature's gentle side. The presentation did not go as planned. The Kytherian delegation had arranged themselves in their portable shelter, their scanning equipment humming nervously as they focused on the terrarium. Elena noticed that they had increased their protective barrier strength. The translucent dome now shimmered with additional energy layers that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Esteemed colleagues, Marcus began with his most reassuring smile. I know your initial encounters with our wildlife have been overwhelming, but I want to show you Earth's gentler side. These are our smallest, most peaceful creatures, the ones that pose no threat to anything larger than a fly. He gestured to the terrarium with the pride of a man revealing a masterpiece. This little spider, for instance, just catches the occasional fly, completely harmless to anything human-sized. It spends most of its time sitting quietly in its web, waiting for food to come to it. No aggression, no hunting behavior, no territorial disputes. Pure pacific existence. The spider, as if summoned by his words, chose that precise moment to demonstrate its hunting technique. A small fly had wandered too close to the web, and the spider's response was instantaneous. A blur of movement that seemed to violate the laws of physics. In less than a second, the fly was wrapped in silk, immobilized, and the spider had injected its paralytic venom with surgical precision. The effect on the Kytherian delegation was immediate and catastrophic. Researcher Kielnara let out a sound that Elena would later describe as like a crystal chandelier being fed through a wood chipper. HFY Stoles' skin went completely transparent, revealing what Elena assumed were internal organs pulsing with panic. Meltai simply collapsed, her elegant form crumpling as if someone had cut her strings. Biological warfare. Vexhi's shriek reached frequencies that made Elena's teeth ache. His skin was now strobing through colors that hurt to look at directly. Chemical weapons deployment. Paralytic neurotoxin delivery system. Restraint web technology. Consumption of live prisoners. It's just catching a fly, Marcus said weakly, his confidence evaporating like morning dew. This is normal spider behavior. They're supposed to. Kielnara had recovered enough to speak, though her voice carried harmonics that suggested she was still processing trauma. It deployed a capture net made from its own body excretions. It immobilized the target with precision chemical warfare. It's designed to consume living, conscious prey. Elena watched in growing horror as the alien scanners went into overdrive, their equipment shrieking with alerts and warnings. The readings they were getting appeared to be causing some kind of systemic cascade failure in their threat assessment protocols. The delivery system alone, HFY Stoles whispered, his skin now a shade of purple, so deep it was almost black, represents biotechnology centuries ahead of our current capabilities. Instant deployment, perfect accuracy, immediate neutralization of target motor functions, while maintaining nerve sensitivity to enhance prey compliance. It's a spider, Marcus insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. They've been around for millions of years. They're perfectly normal. And that, Vexhi's translator was now emitting not just smoke but actual sparks as he pointed a trembling appendage at the garter snake. The snake had calmly begun the process of swallowing a mouse whole, its jaw unhinging with practiced efficiency. Flexible infiltration unit with expanding consumption cavity. Observe the biomechanical adaptations. It's consuming prey larger than its own body mass. Elena watched the snake's throat bulge as it worked the mouse down its gullet, the process as natural as breathing. Through alien eyes, she was beginning to see it differently. The snake's ability to dislocate its jaw joints, the muscular coordination required to swallow prey that should theoretically be impossible to consume, the casual violation of basic biological constraints. Preliminary classification updated, Vexhi announced grimly, his skin now cycling through colors that Elena suspected might be visible only to Kytherian eyes. Earth designation, Class 12 Death World. All observed life forms exhibit extreme predatory adaptations consistent with weaponized ecosystem development. The beetles in the terrarium, perhaps sensing the tension, began their own feeding behaviors, mandibles that could slice through wood, defensive chemical sprays, and coordinated group hunting behaviors that made them look like tiny armored assault vehicles. "This is getting out of hand," Elena whispered to Marcus, watching as the Kytherians frantically updated their databases with what appeared to be emergency military protocols. Marcus nodded numbly, staring at his harmless terrarium as if seeing it for the first time. "Maybe," he said quietly, "we should have started with something truly benign, like a butterfly or something." Elena looked at him with growing dread. "Marcus," she said slowly, "butterflies are predators too. They just hunt flowers instead of other animals. And some of them migrate thousands of miles using navigation systems we don't fully understand." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Vexhi's translator finally giving up and emitting a small puff of acrid smoke. Elena realized, with the clarity that comes with true understanding, that there might not be any truly harmless life on Earth, at least not from the perspective of beings who had evolved in a genuinely peaceful universe. She had no idea how right she was. Against every instinct screaming at her to stop while she was behind, Elena made what would later be recognized as either the most brilliant or most catastrophic decision in first contact history. She decided that transparency was the best policy. If the Kytherians thought a garden spider was a bioweapon, perhaps showing them the full scope of Earth's biodiversity would provide the context they needed to understand that these were simply natural evolutionary adaptations. "Look," she told Marcus during an emergency meeting that night, "they're scientists. They're here to study and understand. If we keep hiding things or trying to ease them into it, they're just going to imagine something worse than reality. Let's show them everything: ocean life, African savanna, polar regions, tropical rainforests. Once they see the big picture, they'll realize this is just how life works on Earth." Marcus, still traumatized by the spider incident, wasn't convinced. "Elena, they classified a garter snake as an infiltration unit. What do you think they're going to do when they see an actual apex predator?" Elena smiled with the confidence of someone who had never seen Earth through genuinely alien eyes. "They'll understand that it's all part of a balanced ecosystem. Natural selection creates impressive adaptations, but that's true everywhere in the universe, right?" She arranged for a comprehensive tour: marine biology stations, African wildlife preserves, Arctic research facilities, and the crown jewel of biodiversity, the Costa Rican cloud forest. Each location had been carefully selected to showcase different aspects of Earth's evolutionary ingenuity. What could possibly go wrong? The tour began poorly and went downhill from there with the relentless efficiency of an avalanche. At the Monterey Bay Marine Biology Station, Dr. James Fletcher, a marine biologist with 20 years of experience and an infectious enthusiasm for cephalopods, had prepared what he called the gentlest possible introduction to ocean life. His plan was elegant in its simplicity. Start with something beautiful, intelligent, and obviously non-threatening. "I want you to meet one of Earth's most remarkable creatures," Fletcher announced proudly, leading the increasingly nervous Kytherian delegation to a large tank containing crystal-clear seawater. "This is a common Pacific octopus. They're incredibly intelligent, almost artistic in their behavior, and absolutely fascinating to observe." The Kytherians, their protective equipment now supplemented with what appeared to be personal force fields, approached the tank with the cautious movements of bomb disposal specialists. Their scanners were already humming with nervous energy, and Elena noticed that their skin colors had shifted to a muddy brown that suggested deep psychological preparation for trauma. "Observe this magnificent creature," Fletcher continued, oblivious to the rising tension. The octopus, a beautiful specimen with arms spanning nearly a meter, rested peacefully against a piece of coral, its skin displaying gentle patterns of cream and brown. "They're incredibly peaceful. This one is probably just daydreaming if octopi can dream. Watch how gracefully it moves." The octopus, as if responding to its cue in some cosmic comedy, began to demonstrate exactly why it had survived hundreds of millions of years of evolution. It flowed like liquid through a maze Fletcher had constructed, its boneless body compressing and expanding with impossible flexibility. As the aliens watched in growing horror, the creature's skin began to change. Not just color, but texture, pattern, and apparent density. In the span of 30 seconds, The octopus perfectly mimicked the appearance of the coral it was moving across, then shifted to match the sandy bottom, then transformed itself into what appeared to be a piece of floating seaweed. Each transition was flawless, complete, and utterly convincing. "Remarkable camouflage systems," Fletcher said cheerfully. "They can match virtually any environment. And watch this." He dropped a complex puzzle box into the tank, a device that typically took human children several minutes to solve. The octopus examined the box for exactly 17 seconds, then solved it with the casual efficiency of a creature that found human puzzles quaint. Its 8 arms worked independently, each appendage operating with its own apparent intelligence while coordinating perfectly with the others. The box opened, revealing a crab inside, which the octopus captured with lightning-fast reflexes. The Kytherians watched in horrified silence as the octopus compressed its boneless body through an opening barely larger than its beak, ambushed the crab with precision that would make a sniper weep with envy, and began consuming it alive. "Shape-shifting infiltration unit," HFY whispered, his skin now permanently pale blue. What Elena had learned indicated Kytherian psychological trauma that might require professional therapy. "Perfect camouflage systems, problem-solving intelligence comparable to military-grade AI, rapid adaptive morphology allowing passage through any aperture larger than its central processing unit. Those are just tentacles for manipulation," Fletcher began, but Keelnara cut him off with a sound like breaking glass. 8 independently operating prehensile manipulation appendages," she shrieked, her scanner smoking from overuse. "Each equipped with hundreds of suction grip systems capable of tool use, fine motor control, and independent tactical decision-making. And did you observe the neurotoxic venom delivery system? The beak? That's just how it feeds." Fletcher tried again. "Beak." ZYXTOL's voice reached frequencies that made nearby seagulls flee. "A built-in armor-piercing weapon capable of penetrating crustacean defensive systems, combined with chemical warfare capabilities and perfect stealth technology." Elena watched the peaceful octopus continue its meal and tried to see it through alien eyes. A creature that could become invisible at will, solve complex problems, use tools, fit through any space larger than its hardest part, and kill prey with built-in chemical weapons. Oh, and it had 8 semi-independent arms that could each perform complex tasks simultaneously. This creature, Meltai spoke for the first time that day, her voice barely above a whisper, represents the perfect fusion of intelligence, adaptability, and lethality. It's a living nightmare designed by evolution's most sadistic imagination. Fletcher looked at his beloved octopus, then at the traumatized aliens, and for the first time began to understand what was happening. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we should skip the shark demonstration." Elena felt a chill run down her spine as she realized she had forgotten to cancel that particular presentation. "Sharks?" Vexhai's voice was barely audible. "You have more creatures?" Elena closed her eyes and realized, with the clarity that comes with impending doom, that she had made a terrible, terrible mistake. The great white shark encounter broke something fundamental in the Kytherian research team's collective psyche, something that Elena suspected might never fully heal. What happened that day would later be studied by xenopsychologists across 17 star systems as a textbook example of catastrophic cultural collision between radically different evolutionary paradigms. Marine biologist Dr. Patricia Wells had meant it as a controlled, educational demonstration. The research facility's great white, a magnificent 12-foot female named Athena, was housed in a state-of-the-art tank system designed to provide optimal viewing conditions while ensuring complete safety. Athena was well-fed, content, and had been living peacefully in captivity for 3 years. She was practically a pet as far as apex predators went. "This is one of our apex marine predators, the great white shark." Wells began her presentation with the enthusiasm of someone who had spent her entire career studying these magnificent creatures. The Kytherians had arranged themselves behind multiple layers of protective barriers, energy shields, physical barriers, and what appeared to be some kind of emergency teleportation devices. They're actually quite docile most of the time. Athena here is perfectly calm and represents the pinnacle of oceanic evolution. For 100 million years of refinement have produced what we consider the perfect marine predator. The Kytherian's scanning equipment was already registering readings that made their displays flash in warning patterns. Elena noticed that Vexhi's skin had preemptively shifted to what she now recognized as the Kytherian equivalent of bracing for impact. "Observe her elegant design," Wells continued, gesturing to Athena as she glided through the water with effortless grace. "Every aspect of her anatomy represents evolutionary perfection. The streamlined body, the perfectly calibrated sensory systems, That was when Athena decided to demonstrate why great whites had survived multiple mass extinction events. A large tuna had been introduced to the tank as part of her regular feeding schedule, and Athena's response was everything 400 million years of apex predator evolution could produce in a single, terrifying moment. The transformation was instantaneous and complete. The docile shark exploded into motion with a violence that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Her massive jaws unhinged with mechanical precision, revealing multiple rows of serrated teeth that gleamed like surgical instruments. Her torpedo-shaped body accelerated with the brutal efficiency of a guided missile, and her dead black eyes rolled back in their sockets, a protective mechanism that gave her the appearance of a creature from humanity's darkest nightmares. The impact when she struck the tuna was visceral, primal, and absolute. Water erupted in all directions as 2,000 pounds of perfectly engineered killing machine demonstrated exactly why nothing in Earth's oceans challenged great whites to their dominance. The sound that emerged from the Kytherian delegation was unlike anything Elena had heard from them before. A harmonized wail that seemed to bypass her ears and resonate directly in her bones. It was the sound of beings witnessing something that fundamentally challenged their understanding of how life could exist in the universe. All four aliens collapsed simultaneously. "Apex bioweapon system." Vexhi was no longer speaking. He was screaming through the translator with such intensity that the device began emitting sparks and smoke. "Hydrodynamic assault platform. Multiple rows of self-sharpening bladed weapons. Perfect killing machine with 400 million years of battlefield testing." His skin was now strobing through colors that Elena was certain weren't healthy for any carbon-based life form. The patterns were so rapid and intense that looking directly at him caused vertigo. Electromagnetic sensory array capable of detecting bioelectric signatures. Kielnara had given up on coherent speech entirely, her words coming in rapid-fire bursts between what sounded like hyperventilation. "IT can sense heartbeats. It hunts by detecting the electrical field of its prey's cardiovascular system." "That's actually pretty remarkable when you think about it," Wells said, genuinely fascinated by the alien's technical understanding of shark physiology. "Remarkable." ZYX translator was definitely malfunctioning now, emitting smoke and occasional shower of sparks. "It's a living torpedo with a biological computer guidance system and self-maintaining weapon arrays. What kind of death world evolution produces perfected killing machines and then just leaves them in the water where anything might encounter them?" Meltai, who had been silent throughout the demonstration, finally spoke in a voice so quiet it was barely audible above the equipment failures. "Dr. Wells," she whispered, "on my homeworld, our apex aquatic predator is roughly equivalent to what you might call a goldfish. It consumes algae and occasionally small plants. Its most aggressive behavior is competing for favorable sunlight positions." Elena looked at Athena, who had returned to her peaceful gliding now that feeding time was over, and tried to imagine a universe where that was the scariest thing in the water. "Meltai," she said gently, "our goldfish are actually omnivores. They'll eat smaller fish if they're hungry enough." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Kytherian equipment systematically failing. "Maybe we should move on to something less intimidating," Elena suggested, though she was beginning to suspect that no such thing existed on Earth. "Please," Vexhi gasped, his skin now cycling through colors that belonged in a fever dream. "Please show us your planet's most harmless creature. Something gentle, something safe, something that doesn't make us question the fundamental benevolence of the universe." Elena felt a spark of relief. Finally, a chance to redeem the situation. She knew exactly what they needed. Something universally beloved, impossibly cute, and absolutely, completely harmless. I know just the thing, she smiled reassuringly, already mentally arranging the trip. Let's go see the pandas. As the words left her mouth, Elena noticed that Marcus had gone completely pale and was making frantic, cut gestures across his throat. But it was too late. The Kytherians had latched onto the promise of finally seeing something that wouldn't traumatize them further. Elena would later realize that this moment, this single innocent suggestion, was when the situation crossed from diplomatic incident into galactic crisis. But for now, she was just happy to finally have something genuinely harmless to show their terrified guests. The giant panda research facility was supposed to be the rehabilitation of Earth's image, the moment when humanity finally showed the galaxy that not everything on their planet was designed by evolution's most sadistic imagination. Dr. Amy Foster, the chief panda researcher and a woman who had devoted her life to these gentle giants, had prepared what she confidently called her most adorable and harmless presentation. The facility itself was a testament to human care and compassion. Sprawling enclosures filled with bamboo groves, climbing structures, and peaceful water features. Everything was designed to showcase pandas in their most natural, relaxed state. Foster had even selected Mei Mei, the facility's most docile resident, specifically because she spent most of her time sleeping and eating bamboo with the unhurried contentment of a creature that had never encountered conflict in her entire life. This is it, Elena thought as they approached the enclosure. This is how we fix everything. The Kytherian delegation approached with the cautious optimism of beings who had been psychologically battered for a week but were desperately hoping for some evidence that the universe wasn't completely insane. Their protective equipment had been reduced to minimal levels, just basic shields and scanning gear. For the first time since arriving on Earth, their skin colors showed tentative, hopeful pastels. Meet Mei Mei, Foster cooed with the pride of a grandmother showing off baby pictures. She led them to a picturesque enclosure where a magnificently fluffy, perfectly round panda sat peacefully munching bamboo in a patch of dappled sunlight. Isn't she just the sweetest thing? All they do is eat bamboo and sleep about 20 hours a day. They're basically living teddy bears. Elena felt a surge of relief as she watched the Kytherian's skin colors shift toward what she had learned indicated mild optimism. Their scanning equipment hummed with gentle, curious tones rather than the panicked shrieking it had produced all week. Finally, they were seeing something that matched their expectations of what peaceful life should look like. Observe her gentle nature, Foster continued, gesturing to Mei Mei with obvious affection. Pandas are incredibly peaceful creatures. They have no natural predators as adults. They don't compete aggressively for territory, and they spend their lives in meditation-like contemplation. They're basically the universe's gift to anyone who believes in the possibility of truly harmless existence. The Kytherians seemed to relax for the first time in days. Vexai's skin showed the first green tones Elena had seen from him. What she had learned indicated genuine pleasure and relief. The other researchers were actually moving closer to the enclosure, their scientific curiosity overcoming their week-long terror. This is more like what we expected to find in the universe, Kielnara said softly, her voice carrying the first notes of wonder rather than horror that Elena had heard since their arrival. A creature that appears to have evolved for peaceful contemplation rather than warfare. The plan lasted exactly 47 seconds. Mei Mei, perhaps sensing the attention or simply following her natural routine, decided it was time to move to a fresh patch of bamboo. What happened next would later be analyzed by xenobiologists as the moment when Kytherian psychology officially broke. The panda rose to her full height. What the aliens had been perceiving as a cuddly, harmless creature approximately the size of a large cushion suddenly revealed itself to be 6 feet of solid muscle wrapped in deceptive fluff. Mei Mei stretched, a casual, everyday movement that displayed the kind of raw physical power that sent the Kytherian scanning equipment into immediate alert status. Then she demonstrated why bamboo, one of the strongest plant materials on Earth, required such specialized consumption techniques. Mei Mei selected a bamboo stalk thicker than a human arm, the kind of bamboo used in construction because of its incredible tensile strength, and proceeded to demonstrate the jaw mechanics that had allowed pandas to specialize in consuming one of nature's most physically challenging food sources. The thick bamboo stalk, strong enough to support the weight of a grown human, snapped between her teeth like a breadstick. Oh, Foster whispered, suddenly realizing her mistake as she watched her beloved panda casually demolish what was essentially organic rebar. Mei, either showing off or simply going about her normal routine, grabbed another bamboo stalk, this one even thicker, and began systematically demolishing it with the methodical efficiency of a biological wood chipper. Her jaw muscles rippled beneath her fluffy exterior, revealing the kind of bone-crushing bite force that had been hidden beneath what everyone assumed was harmless pudge. The sound of splintering bamboo filled the air like a symphony of destruction, sharp cracks, splintering crashes, and the steady crunch of matter being processed by biological machinery that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. Trap Class Deception Unit. Vexhi's shriek reached frequencies that made dogs howl 3 counties over and caused several nearby birds to fall out of trees. His skin was now strobing through colors that Elena was certain violated several laws of physics. Camouflaged assault platform with bone-crushing mandible weapons. Kilnara was openly weeping now, a sound like crystal chimes being tortured in a hurricane. Observe the muscle density, the leverage mechanics of those appendages, the casual destruction of structural materials. She's just eating her lunch, Foster tried desperately, watching her peaceful presentation dissolve into chaos. It's destroying organic matter with casual efficiency. ZYX Toll had given up on standing and was now crouched behind their equipment. And the deception protocols. It presents as harmless, even appealing, then reveals massive destructive capability hidden beneath psychological warfare camouflage. Meltai, who had been silent throughout the week's escalating horrors, finally found her voice. The size, she whispered in tones that suggested she was witnessing the end of rational thought. It's larger than 2 Kytherians standing together. What kind of harmless creature reaches battlemech proportions while disguised as something designed to trigger protective instincts? Elena watched Mei contentedly munch her bamboo, looking for all the world like a living stuffed animal engaged in the most peaceful activity imaginable. But through alien eyes, she was beginning to see something different. 6 feet of muscle disguised as cuddly fluff, wielding jaws that could crack femurs, built like a biological tank, and camouflaged as something that every instinct said you should want to hug and protect. Oh, Elena said quietly, as the full scope of the misunderstanding finally dawned on her. Oh, Vexhi's translator was definitely malfunctioning now, emitting not just smoke but actual flames. Oh, that's your response to revealing that your planet's most harmless creature is actually a stealth battle unit designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities while wielding construction-grade demolition capabilities. Elena looked at the peaceful panda, then at the psychologically shattered aliens, and realized that she had been approaching this entire situation from the wrong direction. Maybe, she said carefully, watching as Mei grabbed another bamboo stalk and began reducing it to splinters with the casual efficiency of a creature that had never questioned its ability to destroy whatever it chose to eat. We should talk. The emergency session of the Galactic Zoological Surveys Council convened via hyperspace communication exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes, after what would forever be known in diplomatic circles as the Panda Incident. Elena found herself standing in a hastily constructed holographic conference room, surrounded by flickering projections of beings from dozens of species across 17 star systems. Every single one of them was staring at her with various alien expressions of disbelief, horror, fascination, and what she was beginning to recognize as the universal look of creatures questioning everything they thought they knew about how life worked in the universe. The Kytherian delegation's preliminary report had preceded her arrival, transmitted in what Elena later learned was the galactic equivalent of a code-red emergency broadcast. The report had been flagged with threat assessment protocols typically reserved for encounters with extinct species like the void devourers of the Omega Sector or discovery of ancient bioweapon caches from the Extinction Wars. Dr. Elena Rodriguez of Earth began Council Prime Threshkala, a being that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and an orchid, whose voice carried the weight of bureaucratic authority across multiple dimensions. We need urgent clarification. Your planet has been preliminarily classified as a Class 15 death world, the highest classification in our comprehensive database spanning 47,000 surveyed worlds. This places Earth in the same category as the void pits of Xyler, the bone seas of Chromax Prime, and the legendary Hellforge worlds of the ancient builders. Elena tried to process this information while maintaining diplomatic composure. That seems somewhat excessive, she said diplomatically, though privately she was starting to wonder if maybe it wasn't excessive. Vexhi's image flickered with static as his emotional state overwhelmed the holographic transmission equipment. Council Prime, I submit the final observation logs for immediate review. The holographic display filled with a comprehensive multimedia presentation that Elena realized represented a week's worth of documentation. The images flowed like a cascade of nightmares. Army ants executing complex military maneuvers with tactical precision that would impress seasoned generals. Spiders deploying biological weapons with surgical accuracy. Octopi demonstrating advanced problem-solving while wielding natural tools with 8-armed efficiency. Sharks patrolling Earth's waters like living missiles guided by electromagnetic targeting systems. And pandas? Peaceful, adorable pandas. Casually destroying matter with their bare appendages while disguised as the galaxy's most huggable creatures. Every single organism we encountered, Vexhi continued, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested he was still processing psychological trauma, displayed adaptations consistent with a comprehensively weaponized ecosystem. Even their so-called harmless creatures possess capabilities that would be classified as military-grade technology on 97% of known inhabited worlds. Elena watched the presentation with growing understanding. She was seeing Earth's wildlife through genuinely alien eyes for the first time, and the perspective was illuminating. It's not that unusual, she protested, though with decreasing conviction. Every planet has predator-prey relationships, evolutionary arms races, survival adaptations. Dr. Rodriguez, interrupted Counselor Yexhai, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix that pulsed with what Elena assumed was polite disagreement. Allow me to provide some contextual perspective. On my homeworld of Lemuria, our apex predator is a creature roughly analogous to what you might call a butterfly. It has beautiful iridescent wings spanning approximately 6 inches and feeds exclusively on flower nectar. Its most aggressive behavior is competing for the sunniest flower patches. Elena blinked. That's actually quite lovely. On Kytheria, added Counselor Meltai, her form shimmering with the soft pastels that indicated she was sharing personal information. Our most dangerous creature is roughly equivalent to what you term a hamster. It's small, furry, stores seeds in specialized cheek pouches, and occasionally delivers what we consider a serious bite when threatened. The wound heals completely within 1 standard day cycle and causes minor irritation comparable to a small scratch. Elena began to understand the scope of the misunderstanding. Your hamster equivalent, she said slowly, would actually be considered quite tame by Earth standards. Which brings us to the fundamental issue, stated Counselor ZYX Toll, a crystalline being whose faceted surface reflected the lights of distant stars. Your hamster equivalent would be classified as a pacification class bioasset on most worlds. Small enough for covert deployment, appealing enough to disarm psychological defenses, and equipped with built-in biological weapons. Even your designated harmless creatures follow what can only be described as military-grade design principles. The Council murmured agreement in 17 different languages, creating a symphony of alien concern that somehow transcended species barriers. However, Council Prime Threshkala continued, their voice taking on tones that Elena recognized as profound scientific fascination. This presents us with an unprecedented situation. Never before in our 47,000 years of galactic survey work have we encountered a sapient species that not only evolved alongside such comprehensive lethality, but actually thrived in that environment. By all statistical models and evolutionary probability matrices, your species should not exist. Yet here you are, having developed advanced civilization, sophisticated art, complex philosophy, and cutting-edge science, while sharing your world with what can only be described as a naturally occurring biological weapons testing facility. Elena straightened, feeling a surge of something that might have been pride. We call it nature. The silence that followed seemed to stretch across 17 star systems. You call it nature? Counselor Yexhai's energy matrix flared so brightly that Elena had to squint. You've domesticated some of these creatures. You keep them as pets and companions. You've integrated them into your daily lives. Well, yes. You swim in oceans containing living torpedoes. Kilnara's voice cracked with the strain of accepting this reality. You walk through forests patrolled by microscopic armies. You've built thriving cities on a planet where the cute animals are stealth battle platforms designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities. Elena found herself smiling, that particularly human expression that had been unnerving beings across the galaxy for the past week. Yeah, she said with a pride she didn't know she possessed. We're pretty proud of that, actually. The silence stretched so long that Elena wondered if the transmission had failed. Finally, Council Prime Threshkala spoke, their voice carrying the weight of historical significance. Motion to reclassify humanity from newly contacted species to species of extreme strategic interest. All in favor. The vote was unanimous and instantaneous. Dr. Rodriguez, the Council Prime continued, we would like to formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Alliance as our Department of Planetary Defense and Threat Assessment. Elena grinned with genuine enthusiasm. I think we'd like that very much. Later, as the Kytherian survey ship prepared for immediate departure, Vexhai approached Elena one final time. His skin had settled into what she now recognized as permanent nervous yellow, a color that suggested he might require extended psychological rehabilitation. Dr. Rodriguez, he said quietly, I have one final question. On a world where every creature is essentially a living weapon, where even the harmless animals could potentially conquer lesser planets through sheer psychological warfare, what do humans consider genuinely dangerous? Elena thought for a moment, considering everything that had happened over the past week. Then she smiled that particularly human smile that had become legendary across the galaxy in the span of 7 days. Australia, she said simply. Vexhai's skin went completely transparent, and Elena could swear she heard his translator whimper before going completely silent. The Kytherian survey ship departed Earth's atmosphere at maximum velocity, broadcasting a single, urgent message to the galactic community. Humanity approved for Alliance membership. Recommend immediate assignment to Threat Response Division. Under no circumstances should anyone ask about Australia. Repeat. Do not ask about Australia. Elena watched the ship disappear into hyperspace and made a mental note to prepare a comprehensive presentation about drop bears, funnel-web spiders, saltwater crocodiles, and box jellyfish for the Alliance Defense Council. After all, if humanity was going to be the galaxy's Department of Planetary Defense, they might as well do it properly. The galaxy, she reflected with satisfaction, was going to be a very interesting place.